Hello friends, welcome back to video number 3 in the BMAT series. In my last 2 videos I gave an overview to the BMAT and I also broke down section 1, giving you some timing tips. In this video I'll be talking about one of the 2 types of questions you'll get in section 1, which are the critical thinking style questions. If you're new to this channel, my name's Brian, I'm a junior doctor in London. I've studied medicine at the University of Cambridge and at Imperial College London. I'm also the founder and the president of Into Med School. We're an organisation that provides free support and mentorship for children all over the UK applying to study medicine at university. If you want more information, I've included it in the description below. Okay, so the BMAT section 1 is split up into 2 different types of questions. You have the critical thinking style questions and you have the problem solving style questions. You'll get about 50% of each in the exam. In this video in particular, I'll be talking about the critical thinking style questions. Okay, critical thinking, what is it and why do they test you? So critical thinking tests your ability to understand components of an argument and also to take important bits of a text. You don't actually need to understand the subject within the body of text. In fact, actually knowing beyond what's involved in the text can actually lead you astray when you're answering these questions in an exam scenario. The type of questions that you'll get in the critical thinking questions in section 1 can actually broadly be split into 6 different categories, remembering that these questions are all multiple choice. First, you have the conclusions. What are the conclusions that you can make from the passage of text? Then you have the flaws. Which of the following best describes the flaws in the argument? Or they can ask you about the principles. Which of the following best illustrates the principles underlying the arguments? Or they can ask you about the assumptions. Which of the following is an assumption that you need to make in the argument? The 5th type of question are looking at the strengths and weaknesses. Which of the following, if true, would best strengthen or weaken the argument? And then the 6th and final type are reasoning parallels. Which of the following is the best parallel for the reasoning above? Having scored highly myself and speaking to other people who got the top scores in the country, we all agree that the best way to prepare for section 1 is to practice these questions and repeat the questions as well. The reason why this works so well, and you'll notice this when you do the practice papers and the past papers that can be found online, is that the questions that you'll get in the exam are very repetitive. The same questions come up again and again with slightly different wording, and there's a really predictable pattern to them. The more questions you do, the more you'll get a feel of the style of questioning and what they're looking for. It may sound really boring, but I would say that's one of the most important things for doing well in section 1. Get the practice papers and also get the past papers and just do them again and again until you keep getting it right. There are, however, some other tips for when you're doing the practice papers as well as when you sit the real exam. The first one is read the passage quickly. Don't get bogged down with the facts that they present and wondering if they're true or not. I've mentioned this already in a previous video. The speed at which you read the passage of text is often the most important thing in determining how you do in the actual exam, because it determines how long you have to process the question as well as looking at the possible answers, many of which are going to be very, very similar. Okay, and then the next top tip for when you're practicing and when you're sitting real thing, when you're reading it in your head, be as animated as you can. Think of yourself trying to convince someone of an argument. The more animated you can be when you're reading it, the more likely you are to then find the conclusion to the passage of text. Okay, and then my next tip is specifically for when you're looking at answering the questions about identifying the flaws or the points that can strengthen or weaken an argument. The top tip for these questions is be as judgmental as you can. What you want to do is act like you're some top professor or a teacher really trying to break down someone's argument. Be really critical about the passage of text, how they present it and what they're actually presenting, and that's the best way to identify the flaws and seeing what could strengthen or weaken the argument. Alright, and now there's one more top tip for the critical thinking style questions in section 1. As I said earlier, all of the questions are going to be multiple choice, and a lot of the answers, the possible answers that they're going to give, are going to be very, very similar. What you'll find is that actually, because of the style of the questions, when they ask you what is the most likely to strengthen or what will most weaken an argument. Several of the answers might technically be correct. What you want to avoid is reading through the possible answers and then picking the first one that sounds correct. Even though it's technically correct, it might not actually be the correct answer for the question because it isn't the answer that will most strengthen or most weaken an argument. When you read through all the possible answers, you might find that actually several of them are correct and you need to pick the one that is most correct. What you want to do is actually go through all the answers, cross out the ones that you know are definitely incorrect, and of the ones that are technically correct, narrow them down to one possible best answer. Okay, so those are the top tips for doing well in the critical thinking style questions in section 1. As I said, these are my thoughts as well as the thoughts of other people that had got the top scores within the country. My next video will be breaking down how to do well in the other style of questions in section 1, which are the problem solving questions. If you've got any questions or any queries, then please put them in the comment section below and I'll try my best to answer them. Finally, thank you very much for watching and subscribing. I hope to see you next time.